and this isn't live or anything. It's just us here.
Okay, great.
Um, yo, Marcy, Elvis Walker, the one, the only, um, the queen of just my heart in general. Just like I knew, like from the first time we connected, I'm just like, kin, we're just folk. But anyways, hi, welcome back to the pod.
I'm
Now
so
officially
happy
friend
to
of the
be
pod because
here.
I think two times on a podcast makes you friend of the pod.
Oh, really?
Something like that. Yeah.
Okay, well, work. I like it. I like it. Great, great, great,
Yeah.
great.
Last time we were
Yeah.
talking, I remember that interview because funny enough, it was another ADHD day for me where I forgot where I needed to be and I left my bag at home, and so I interviewed you on my phone via
Yeah.
Zoom because and to this morning I went out and then came back and then blah blah blah. But anyways, so glad to be with you this morning. So thankful to be with you. Thank you for taking time with me.
Oh my gosh, thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Love an invite from people
Yeah.
I love.
Well, feeling so mutual. We're here today to talk about your new book, Everybody Come Alive, which is out when?
It's out May 30th.
May 30th. So we got some late. It's available for pre-order now. So we're doing like the rounds on all
Yes.
the podcasts.
Pre-order. Yeah, the Audible is available for pre-order as well. And I'll be reading it, which I'm a little nervous about, but
Listen, you're gonna be so good. Your voice is very easy and delicious to listen to.
maybe, but I don't know. But I'm excited that I get to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
to um I have to create an audio sample and send it in like as an audition to read my book.
It's crazy. Like
Yeah.
they didn't make me audition, which surprised me.
Hmm.
And I wasn't sure if that's because it's memoir. I don't know how they decide.
I don't know
But
either. And like I don't think I don't think there's a really clear thing. I
yeah.
think it probably just depends on
Yeah.
who they're going with, but the way that my publisher works with it. Anyways, either way, I'm feeling good about it, and I have no doubt. Like if they don't pick me, I'm gonna be like, okay, that audiobook is never gonna
Oh,
sell then.
yeah,
But
no. They're
anyways,
gonna pick you. They're gonna pick you for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. Anyways, besides besides Beyonce not winning album of the year once again, are there any other things that are particularly? I mean, that's my heartbreak. We can deal with that later. Um, but yeah, how's life for you? What do you tell me something in your life right now that's like really bringing you a spot of joy? That's really like making you, I don't know, come alive.
Well, I'll tell you what, when Beyonce dropped Renaissance, that definitely
It's still
made
on
me
repeat.
come. It's still and I love it because it was the first album that my kid like made me wait to listen to because they didn't want me to listen to the whole album. They wanted to experience it with me.
Mm.
And then they totally just went and listened to it with their roommates and totally like forgot that they had sat here waiting to listen to it. This is a while back.
Mm.
So, but I guess what's making me come alive right now, shoot, I don't really know. Um, I was pretty upset about Beyonce not winning.
Mm.
Very happy for Lizzo and with
Right.
Song of the Year. Pretty upset about the things that were being said about Rihanna. Very excited about Rihanna.
Hmm.
I guess the thing that's most keeping me alive right now and helping me come alive right now, um, we have been all about the 1619 Project, watching that on Hulu,
Mm.
but also I just started watching White Lotus. I didn't watch it. And that's what we did last night. That was Valentine's Day. Me sick, thinking I was going to die, and we binged the whole first season.
Ooh.
And we just kept going. And that just really excited me because I had just seen The Last of Us, and I don't know
Oh
the main
man. I've
I
been
just
watching that.
saw that episode with Nick Offerman and
Oh my
him,
god!
and
Spoilers ahead if y'all haven't seen it. Skip ahead a little
cried
bit.
my eyes out.
Bawled, bawling. I'm sitting. I'm like my partner's in the kitchen, like doing his
Yeah.
thing, like literally like doing the dishes, being a selfless servant, and I'm sitting in the living room, just like knees up to my, and just going,
Oh my
oh
gosh.
my,
And I didn't even want to watch the dang show because I was
no,
like, listen, I'm an oppressed person in this country. I don't need to watch like zombies and
yeah, I don't like.
coming and
I need some.
chasing me. It's the last thing I need. But that episode just changed it for me.
Same. It was the reason I was at a coffee shop, just like minding my business. The barista's talking with another customer about some show, and I'm not listening. But then somebody walked up to them and said, "Excuse me, are you guys talking about episode 3 of The Last of Us?" And they said, "Yes." They went, "Oh my god!" And they all
Yeah.
like freaked out. I'm like, "Okay." I said, "Okay, so perfect strangers are having an experience about this." So
Yes.
that to me was like, okay, I'm gonna go watch
Mm-hmm.
it. And then I was like, this gay episode too. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, because queer people were so hungry for representation, sometimes like, yeah, fine, I'll watch it. We'll take.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
then it's like it's
I get
so.
that.
But then like they delivered, they fully
They
delivered.
they delivered in all the ways that we haven't always delivered queer stories. First of all, there was sex.
Mm-hmm.
There was the whole I was just the whole idea of the end of the world,
Mm-hmm.
and you still not knowing if you could be your whole self. That moment, I don't want to get into it, but that moment
Mm-hmm.
where he asked who was she,
Mm-hmm.
and she said, and he says it wasn't a she, and I just was like, oh my
And
gosh,
and then
but it
it's
was
like I
like
know.
this scared kind of way, and I was just like, dang, at the end of the world. But I have been saying to my hubs, I have been saying, babe, you know, the first people that they're gonna be burning in piles on the street are black and queer people. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so it was a moment for me. I just loved it so much. Loved,
Mm-hmm.
loved.
Yeah.
So that kept me alive.
Yeah. Oof. Nothing like a zombie show to keep you alive. You know what I'm saying? Hallelujah. Um, Speaking of living, your book, Everybody Come Alive, coming out in May.
Hmm.
Um, first of all, I love the way you formatted this book, where there's like all these delicious like little mini prose
Yeah.
in between
Hmm.
chapters, where it's just like this is like a piece that I just want to paste in here. And as
Yeah.
I was reading this, I was like, dang, I should have done that. That's cool. I'm gonna do that next time. Oh, and also, sorry, I just realized that apparently I cut my finger, and I wonder how long I've been
Oh
bleeding.
no.
It's okay.
Mm.
Um, Give me one second. Let me just go get
Yeah.
a tissue real quick.
Yeah, please do.
That is strange.
Care for yourself, please. Oh,
Okay,
I
never
see
mind.
your,
I
I
wanted
saw
to.
your fur baby.
Oh, little tippy tip. You wanna say hi?
Hello. Hi, darling. Hello. Oh my gosh,
That's
so
the
cute.
angel of angels right there.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, no
Um,
worries.
but your book, Everybody Come Alive,
Mm-hmm.
it's what I like is like a memoir in essays, um, which I think is really, really cool. Like, just like I don't know, like it's a little less common. I think there's so many like writings, like memoir writing out there where I'm gonna write a whole story and a whole through line, but yours is like this chunk. I want to talk about this, and I want to talk about this, and I want to talk about this, all with this thing. I'm just like, I am just out here trying to be who I am, and I'm
Yeah,
trying to let other people be who they are, and this is how
yeah.
I'm learning to do it within this body, within
Mm-hmm.
this context, as a black woman, as the mother of a queer child,
Yeah.
as somebody who isn't like, an academic, in
No.
like the traditional
Mm-mm.
sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I love this work. It's a beautiful
Oh, I
offering.
appreciate
And
that.
uh, so for you, if you wanted to sum it up, if you wanted to like tell somebody about what Everybody Come Alive is about, how would you tell them?
I would say it's a memoir and essays about how I literally came alive and hope that other people come alive, and how I came alive to every aspect of my being. I came
Mm,
alive to my blackness, I came alive to my womanhood, I came alive to my holiness. And those are the three sections of the book: Black, Woman, Holy. And
mm,
it's really hard to hold those three together, because it's fine for you to be black. It's even fine for you to be a black woman. But not everybody will say that you are holy. It's
mm,
just in your being, that your being is actually a reflection of God or the divine or whatever you call greater than yourself.
mm. Damn. Why is this? Well, why? Let me ask the question then. Why? Why is it so hard to like keep all three together?
Well, I could just say flat out racism and
Yeah, of course.
sexism,
Ding, 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 ding,
but
ding.
I think one of the things I really tried to highlight, you were talking about the prose pieces in between. I wanted to show what the culture was for my come up, like me coming up, what the culture was, who was speaking in culture, what was informing culture. I think it's hard because culturally, we have decided that there's only one story
Mhm.
that's worth being told. And it's usually from a very white male heterosis perspective. Or if it's not from that perspective, it won't piss off white male heterosis people. So that's the cultural normative from the church, from the Grammys, from, you name it. And so to be able to talk about culture, and that's why I bop around so much, and I couldn't just do one arc, also because my family's a whole thing. So
Mhm.
there's that, doing a one arc story is like, well, can't talk about that without talking about this.
Mhm.
But I think the whole idea how we inform who we are. We were just talking about the representation with The Last of Us and
Mhm.
even with White Lotus and 1619 Project. When you are coming up without a language for who you are, it's very hard for you to come alive to yourself.
Yeah.
And that line comes from a Jimi Hendrix song, Everybody Come Alive, Everybody Love a Lot. And I love that lyric
Yeah.
so much. The whole idea of if we all could just come alive, how much more love would there be in the world if
Mm.
that were just permissible? And we know it's beneficial, but we haven't allowed it to be permissible. And we've
Mm.
allowed that to be legislated. How much of a human you can be has been so legislated from the top down. And in this book, it's all throughout the culture. So I talk about Laura Ingalls Wilder. I talk about Public Enemy. I talk about Muhammad Ali, and I talk about Luke and Laura from General Hospital. So you really know how old I
Hmm.
am.
Come on, General
So
Hospital.
come on, Luke and Laura. I talk about Monica Lewinsky. So there are
Hmm.
all these different points of culture that really did inform my own thinking about myself. And I was represented in my absence. In the
Mm.
absence of not seeing yourself, you are truly represented. You are told who you can become when you can't see yourself. And when you can't see yourself in TV and music, and books, there's a part of the book where I talk about all the books that I read in school, and I think all of them had something. If there was a black person in it, they were enslaved, or it was Jim Crow or whatever. But when you don't see yourself, the representation is
Hmm.
you don't belong.
Right.
You are not human, and you are not worthy, and you are not valuable. So with everything that's going on right now, this book was supposed to come out a while ago, and there were lots of hiccups because of publishing
Right.
world. My first publisher dropped me when my kid came out, and
Are you?
yeah, yeah, my first publisher dropped me when my kid came out.
Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah,
If y'all want to see how far my eyebrows shot up to heaven, go watch this on YouTube.
yeah, yeah. But let me tell y'all, I have to go tell you
Wow.
this.
Yeah.
I blame myself in that situation because I knew who they were. They told me who they were.
Mm,
And I said, okay, because
mm,
I didn't think that was my battle.
mhm,
So, talk about privilege and really effed
mm,
up allyship. I mean, that's
mm,
some messed up like I'm saying, I'm like, every hill is your hill to die on. Like it just
mm.
really is. And I had said in this meeting, because they were really concerned about my relationship to I have been in a Be the Bridge group with Jen Hatmaker,
Mhm.
and it
Right.
was not long after everything that happened with her, and they took her books off the shelf and all that kind of
Right.
stuff. And they were basically trying to make sure that I wasn't what my theology was around sex and gender. And at the time, I said, well, I am in the same camp as Jen.
Right.
But
Right.
I knew Jen's whole story, so I said, but that's not my hill to die on. My hill to die on is race,
Right. 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 Right.
which is probably the most disgusting sentence I've ever said in my life, not even knowing I was being disgusting
Mm,
until my kid came out and I realized, oh, all the oppressed people hills are my hill to die on. It
mhm.
is very true. When Audre Lorde said, "We ain't, none of us are free until we're all free," I
Mhm.
nothing could be more true than that. And
Yes.
it was a lesson learned. And what I can say for the publishing house, they told me exactly who they were. They really did.
Mm,
And the editor, who I loved, she really came to bat for me. She went to them and asked for them to allow me to still publish the book. But she knew. She said, "I'm going to go, but I'm going to tell you, because I told you when we sat down, these are some white, very conservative men who run
mhm.
this company."
Right.
And it they did. I respected that they did what they had to do. Do I respect their decision
Mhm.
about other people's bodies? No.
No. Yeah.
But they told me what was going to happen if I should step out of line, and it happened. And you know what? It's a chain broken, and I'm glad that it's
Yeah,
broke.
man.
And
Come on.
you know,
That's like,
being yeah,
woof.
yeah. But it was hard. It was because I finished the book. I
Mhm.
I finished it. It was my last draft, my fourth draft, and
Wow.
and it was funny because the editor called me. She said, "How do you feel about it now?" And I was just like, you know what? I think this is a book I really wanted to write.
Mhm.
And then I said, and by the way, I do have a hill to die on. Those were my exact words.
Mhm.
And she said, "Oh well, she said I'll go to the hill with you as far as I can go, but I don't own this hill. This hill is owned. This company is owned by somebody else,
Mhm.
and they are not going to go with it. And they most certainly didn't." Fun story is that I thought I was going to lose my agent too, but
Mm.
my agent's kid had come out. So she was leaving too. So she was leaving her agency to start her own agency. And we both
Oh.
went out together like, fine, F them. We'll just go do our
She's
own
like, I'll just do
thing.
the whole thing myself. What you
Yeah.
were saying about that, like once you kind of got free of those expectations of like a more conservative, or like my publisher has expectations of me, that you were finally free to write the book that you actually wanted to write. That that to me, I'm like,
Yeah.
that's liberation. That's free. Like when I have like there's nothing, as like I don't need to gain
Yeah.
anything and there's nothing to lose.
Yeah, because they were basically like they would still publish the book as long as I didn't talk about LGBTQIA issues.
Hmm.
As long as I didn't talk about my child and as long as I didn't use my child's pronouns.
They literally don't talk about
So
your life
I'm
in your
like,
memoir about how you came alive. Please do not tell us about your home life or your family in
well, and
any
at
great
the
detail.
time, Kevin, at the time, the book was not even called Everybody Come Alive. It was called Black Coffee, White Friends.
Oh yeah, okay. I
And
forget.
I
Okay.
was, and so, and then when I got with Convergent, and there was a whole bunch of stuff that went down with that, and it came to me that they asked if I could rename my book because they felt like it was too much like another person's book. And I was upset by that. But I also was like, I never wanted to call it Black Coffee with White Friends because I was like, this has nothing to do with that. It's so different than my
Hmm.
Instagram feed because in my Instagram feed, I don't really share my life story. I
Hmm.
don't
Yeah,
tell.
that's a place where you're doing a lot more educating and
Right,
yeah,
right. And so I didn't feel it was, but they were trying to capitalize on followers. And
right.
I didn't think it was the right move. So to be able to name it again, I picked that name quite intentionally from one of the prose pieces about my mother, about my being born around the same time that the first man walked on the moon and
Mm,
Jimi Hendrix. So to be able to pick that name and to love it and to
yeah.
claim it as like kind of like a mantra over my life at that time because I really was distressed for I think it was a good 6 months. I didn't know what was going to happen. I had written this book. I had no one was, and my agent was sending it out and I didn't know what was going to happen, but I was there were days I was like balled up crying. There were days when I'm outside working out crying and like just drinking and crying,
Yeah,
like
just like I'm
really. Yeah, and but I tell you what, if my kid ever wondered if it was okay, that was the moment where they were like, oh, they really are mean saying to me that
mhm.
there is nothing that they're going to, because my kid knew how much it meant to me to publish a book, and they were really shocked when I said I'm not going to publish a book with someone where I can't use my kids' pronouns and
Yeah.
I can't advocate for them. That's crazy. And to have my kid just come alive a little themselves, that they could be my kid, that they didn't have to be a gendered body in order
Mm-hmm.
for me to love them, you
Hmm.
know? So,
That's it.
yeah, it was worth it. I'd go through it all again. I would hope I get it right the first time. Actually.
We always hope that we get it right the first time, don't we?
Yeah,
We always,
yeah, absolutely.
I think that's, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I like, there's all these moments where, ugh, I look back through like my feed in college and like, especially, I was in a fraternity in college. And so,
Shut the front door.
oh, girl, Sigma Phi Epsilon,
What?
1901, baby.
Oh my
One
gosh.
of the oldest, and therefore the one with the most problems and the biggest track record of like things that are not okay.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
but like it was funny enough, like like there's a there's a blessing in being the person who like when we get to this point in our lives, like further down the line, and we like share like, yeah, I used to do a lot of racist shit because I didn't know I was being
Yeah,
racist,
yeah,
or
exactly.
or even for myself, I used to do a lot of transphobic shit and homophobic
Yeah.
shit, thinking that I was being loving in the name of Jesus or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think part of the glory and maybe like part of my repentance even is telling that part of my life story too and being able to say that is who I was and like when I was dead, when I was not connected to love, when I was
Right.
not fully alive. And look what God still has done, if you will, or look what life has done, look what love has done. Look at like what I was still able to do. Look how I was able to evolve and change. If that's not
Right.
evidence of love, if that's not evidence of God's goodness, I don't know what is. And
Right.
to note that
Exactly.
like I didn't have to do it inside of, it was not when I stayed inside the rules of the establishment that I found God. It was, and the same thing with you. It was when you lost your life, if you will, when you lost the thing that you found it.
Yeah.
It's funny
Exactly.
how that shit works, huh?
It really does work. It really does work that way. It really does. Yeah. Absolutely.
I want to pull on one of the things you did in, I believe it's in the section of Black, and you're talking. I'm trying to find the quote. Um, there it is. It's about that translation of that Song of Solomon where
Oh
the
gosh. Yeah.
woman is writing and she says, "I am black but beautiful," and how it kind of like, when I was learning that, I remember sitting and it was Dr. Shaniqua Barnes was doing like a lesson on that, I think. Excuse me, no, it was Will Gaffney. I apologize. It was Will
Yeah.
Gaffney. And she said that the way that she's translated that always is black and beautiful, not black but
Yeah.
beautiful. And so when I was reading this is on chapter, it was on page 114. Um, uh, is it okay if I just read this little paragraph? And then
Yeah.
maybe we can
Please
talk
go
about it?
right ahead. Yeah.
It says, "For my grandmother and even my mother, my body in the hands of a white man wasn't any different from the concubine's broken and dismembered body in the hands of her enslaver, and inevitable end to a story born of old age history of violence against black women. They knew that black girls went missing and no one looked for them. They knew black women were raped, no one ever convicted. They feared that I or one of my sisters would fall for the wrong white boy and get entangled in something that could never be untangled. So the two of them worked in tandem. While my grandmother warned against the charms of white wiles, my mother encouraged a dark and beautiful black love." And then you go on to talk more about your relationship with Simon. Um, and it's one of these things where it's like there's all these things to be fearful of, all these things to be fearful of, and yet your mother still was like, I don't know, like it feels like she was giving you like the path forward. It's like here's all the scary things to watch out for, but here's a path forward anyways. I wonder if like
Yeah.
maybe you can unpack that a little bit and like what that felt
Well,
like.
it was a really interesting thing because I grew up in two households, my grandmother's house home and my mother's home. And my mother they both had issues with colorism, but on different spectrums. So my grandmother was a very light-skinned woman, very Lena Horne looking,
Mm-hmm.
Dorothy Dandridge looking, and she really did not like people my skin tone and darker. Like she really
Mm,
did not. Um, my mother, on the other hand, really didn't like light skinned black women. So
mm,
and actually had an affair with my father because he was dark skinned and she wanted a brown baby, like because her husband was very light skinned. So she wanted a baby that she felt looked more like her. My mother is
mm-hmm.
about was about my complexion. She's passed since she's been dead since 2010.
Mm,
But so I had this, but they both were very concerned about whiteness, us encountering whiteness. Even though my grandmother chose to live in an all white community, my mother decided that it was best for us to all live in this all white community with my grandparents. So it's so bizarre to me that these two women who had all these issues with color and all this fear of whiteness valued it. And
mm,
so they were fearful of it, but they valued it. They wanted us to do well and to be able to navigate in an all white school. They wanted us to get the jobs that white people had, but they didn't want us to tangle and dance too much because they knew stories. Like they knew Reese Taylor stories. They knew stories of black women who things happened to them at the hands of white men
Hmm.
and nothing was ever done. And so to have the two of them working in tandem, so to speak, my mother really presenting this dark and beautiful love of blackness, and my grandmother having this resistance of that. Like, there was part of my grandmother who was very proud to be black and loved her blackness, but not like my mom did. Not,
Hmm.
she didn't, she liked a very assimilated,
Hmm.
you know, the 10% blackness, the brown, lighter than a brown paper bag kind of blackness, where
Right.
you behaved a certain way, you knew how to assimilate into your culture, you knew how to speak the queen's English. My mother was I more so wanting to live in the fullness of her being without having that white gaze. Why she chose that for us, I wish she could tell me. But it really was, I think, because she thought it was going to be better for us.
Hmm.
And we weren't asked any questions of if it actually was. My sisters and
Right.
brothers and I are still now talking, are just now since I started the book, and now that the book is coming out, started talking about the things that we endured in our childhood,
Yeah.
the racist things that we endured that we never shared with each other. The things that
Yeah.
we that happened to us when we went to friends' homes or at
Hmm.
school or on the school bus that we didn't tell one another. So
Yeah.
because we weren't taught that we were supposed to resist. We really weren't.
Ain't
We
that
were
it?
taught to be safe, not to resist, because to
If you
resist
resist
might,
it,
right.
you get it.
Yeah, exactly.
Woof. And so it's very interesting. Like it's never like I never look at our parents, or like any of like our parents or our grandparents. I never have any like beef with them, like around certain things because it's like when I stand back and I like look at it from 10,000 feet, I can see the whole landscape of your life and like my father's life, for example. He was a Mexican man, and um, I have to take out my jacket. It's warm in this house. The it's like that's exactly what it was like. It was the I'm afraid of this thing, but I also really have to play the game if I want to survive, if I want to, and also if I
Yes.
want to eat, if I want to have a
Yes.
job, if I want
Mm-hmm.
to,
Mm-hmm.
and like so it's like I get why my mother encouraged us to not lean so heavily into our Garcia name and like to
Mm-hmm.
not, or like my dad like never speaking Spanish in the house.
Yeah.
Um, and
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, it's like I never knew who I was, and like
Yeah.
or that I think it was the scariest part or the saddest part was because my dad like effectively erased himself. It's just like I learned
Exactly.
how to erase myself too. Yeah. When you were starting, when you were becoming a mom and like raising a
Yeah.
child, like what became different for you? What did you like notice in yourself as you were beginning to mother? Was it still like some of the similar tendencies, or it was just like, nah, I know how to resist this and I know how to teach or like love better?
Man, I wish I could say that I knew how to resist it. I didn't. When I had Max, I think my relationship with my mom being separated from her if essentially abandoning us to our grandparents. I just thought my presence alone was a win,
Mm, nice.
because
Yeah.
I didn't have that from my own mother. So I thought I was winning just by doing things like reading books to them at night, um, being very concerned about them not feeling poor in the childhood or less than in their childhood in their classrooms. I still believed that white institutions had something better than a
Mm,
black institution did because that had been so ingrained in me. And not just in me, I think just in the culture in general. I listened to this interview with Nicole Hannah Jones, who wrote the 1619 Project. And before she wrote the 1619 Project, she was heavily invested in the desegregation of schools because our public schools are still very segregated,
mm-hmm.
extremely segregated,
Yes.
actually more segregated than some of them were before Brown versus the Board of Education. So she was on a show with Torre, the Torre show,
Mm-hmm.
and he had asked about her own child's education. And Nicole Hannah Jones was like, my kid goes to the public school in my neighborhood. And his kids, he was an African American man, he was talking about how his kids go to a, a private school because he wants his kids to, eventually be able to go to Ivy League schools and to have the best, all the
Mm-hmm.
reasons that we say that we're picking these private schools over the public schools. And he asked Nicole Hannah Jones, basically, he asked her a question about how do we as black parents hope for our kids to have access to this status, um, especially if we can't afford the private schools or if we choose not to put them in private schools. And Nicole Hannah Jones said, "Do you really want me to answer the question?" And I was like, I don't even know if I
Oh,
want you to answer the
oh.
question, and I'm not
Wait,
even asking it.
if anybody's asked, do you really want me to answer that?
Answer the question.
You really got to be
Oh
sure
my
that there's a yes in your
gosh.
spirit about that because
Right? You really do. And so she said, I don't want my kid. She said, if my kid goes to Harvard, then I would feel like I did something wrong.
hmm,
And it was a bold statement to just say, and then she said, and how is my kid still not privileged? Yes, my kid goes to the same school that the black single mom in the neighborhood goes to, and I elevate that school with my presence there. Right?
hmm,
Why should I have something different? We're paying taxes to the same place. Why should my kid be special? And she said, but really, if we think about it, she's like, my kid's home with a tutor now.
hmm,
And my kid has extracurricular programs that I can afford them.
hmm,
And my kid has a mom who's, a New York Times columnist, So how is my kid not privileged? Still more privileged. So I wish I would have had that mentality,
hmm,
because the diversity that Max needed wasn't there when I put them into a private school. It
hmm,
wasn't there. And they desperately needed it as a queer kid,
right.
as a black kid, as a kid who didn't come from the enormous wealth that most of the students came from,
Hmm,
as a kid that didn't have like a legacy of wealth, because, those schools tend to have, you know, grandma have money and
hmm.
great great grandfather have money and
They got
everybody have
endowments
money and the
and
money and the money and the money.
right.
So I really wished I would have done better and not, but it's that fear. It's that fear. We were told to fear diversity, fear the diversity of social economic ability in a school. Like if there are poor kids in that school, oh, they must be,
Hmm.
they're all going to be gangbangers, or if they're Latinx kids and black kids in that school, oh, my white kid's going to be endangered. The fact that we've done this to ourselves, we have said
Hmm.
that diversity is not as valuable as the homogenous white institution. And I really wish that I had sooner taken my kid out of that Christian school. And especially as Christians, if you're Christian, like you feel like
Mm.
the safety that you're trying to create, which is so funny to me because nobody's safe in the Bible. Ain't nobody safe in the Bible.
No,
Like,
never was.
safety is
He,
not
he even
like
said it right there. He said, "Son of man ain't got no place for his head."
I know, but for some reason, we strive so hard to keep our kids safe. And then we tell these kids that we have sheltered, they ain't met nobody different, to
Mm.
go out into the world
And
and
make an
defend the
impact.
faith and make it, yeah, it's the oxymoron of it. You don't have to know anything about these people groups. You just go
You just gotta love
and
Jesus.
it's all you
I mean
need.
that's what got me out on the missionary field. That's what like said
Yeah.
so many
Yeah, it's
truthfully. And when I say
crazy.
this, like well-meaning, well-intentioned, truly
Yes.
faithful
Yeah.
individuals who want to, who like. Here's the deal. Most of the people who I encountered when I was a short-term missionary, um, and like I was like a hybrid short-term, long-term because I was going to 11 countries in 11 months, so it was different. But every single person on my squad wanted to be there because they felt, quote unquote, like there was a call of God on their life to go serve in this particular way. I don't think anybody just randomly gives up a year of their life to go do this thing,
Right,
something
right,
like that.
right.
And because we are sheltered, that we think the
Yeah.
only way we can make an impact is if we tell people about this person who
Right.
died 2,000 years ago and maybe rose from the dead. We're not sure. We got no proof. But if you put your faith in them, long story short, it's like there are all these earnest people out there who are trying
Very
to
earnest.
do the right thing, and we are often the people who get burnt the most when we can't, when we finally meet Jesus, if you will, when we finally get clarity about who God loves,
Yeah.
we don't fit, and all of a sudden we're the
You
problem.
will not fit.
We're
And then
yeah. I wish if I could go back and tell my younger, 8, 9 years ago, Kevin, it's like I know you want to fit so badly.
yeah.
There's a reason that you don't, and it's because you don't fit here in
Yeah.
this particular place. But that doesn't mean that you do not fit into the vast tapestry of this world. So why are you trying to be apart from it? You fit into this world quite nicely. You're trying to keep yourself separate. You're trying to file down your edges so you can be a nice little whatever for them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Uh,
so true. So it and I understand it to an extent why my parents, grandparents, and my mom and my dad, for his part, performed in the way that they performed. They had really
mm-hmm.
come out of a situation, like to see where they came from, out coming out of Jim Crow, the
Right.
Jim Crow era, seeing what happened, the white backlash to all of the civil rights gains. So that's the thing that's really important to my story is that yes, I was born in 1969. There have been all these civil rights gains, but at the time that I was born during the backlash. I was
Mm,
born a year after Dr. King was assassinated. I was born after all these people have been
mm,
killed for their fight for equality, equity, um, and justice. And I think my parents thought, well, damn, I'm just going to keep my kids safe. And
mm,
so, and on the heels of that, the busing situation, which was most of the 70s. Like, Cleveland was one of the last to fully integrate and to fully start using busing. So there was all this stuff that was happening in the culture that was saying otherwise to the gains that had happened at the Capitol with,
Mm,
the voting rights and the Civil Rights Act and Brown versus the Board of Education, all of that, all those things that happened that were gains. There was white backlash that
mm-hmm.
was really aggressive and that people ended up dead. And I think in today's time, it's a truly telling story, because we are still in that white backlash that
Yes.
that comes so aggressively, and the people leading it is the church. And
Mm-hmm.
so my feeling is that while they can't tell me it's not okay to call me the N word, or to say that you want to be segregated, or segregation today, segregation tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
segregation. You can't say that, but what you can say is don't say gay.
Right.
And what you can say, and in doing
Is no
that,
CRT.
yeah, you can say no CRT. It's just a different dog whistle is all that it
Mm. You can
is.
say woke. You can call somebody, talk about wokeism.
Yeah, but only in the negative. You know,
Right.
like, so it's so I wish that I had. I'll tell a quick story just to tell you
Mm.
how it went for us. There was this time, it may even be in the book, but there's this time when Max was really little, and we were at the library, and I saw this bust of Lincoln, and I said, "Oh, look, baby, here's the man who set all the slaves free, set the black people free." And Max said, now my history was the history I knew at that time,
Mm-hmm.
but let's not even talk about how messed up that history is, because that's not
Right.
what happened.
Mm-hmm.
But Max said, "What black people?" And I said, "Us, you and me, black people." And Max looked at me and went, "I'm not black, I'm brown." And this kid was maybe 5. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember going home thinking, oh my gosh, my mother just rolled over in her grave. I don't even know how I didn't know that my kid didn't know that they were black. Like, it was a moment where I really was just like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm preparing them. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I don't know if, and we were in a pretty diverse school at that time. We were in Chicago. So I don't know if I was really preparing them for what their skin color meant and
Mm-hmm.
to others in the world. They were being very sheltered because A, they're freaking adorable, and two, um, I lived in a community that while there wasn't a huge number of white people, it was of black people. There were black people, there were queer people, there were
Mm-hmm.
Asian people, there were, like immigrants, and like there was this huge mix of people of culture. And because of that, I thought I was doing something, because I thought that you could just kind of like a church color code the congregation, but
Mm-hmm.
not change the board of directors. And basically, the board of directors for my household was still a very white normative
Mm.
story.
Right.
And I hadn't yet flipped and learned history and blackness and identity in a way that I could pass down to Max. Luckily, we were able to go through that together during their high school years.
Mm. I'm glad. I'm
Yeah.
really. Um,
You, me, really.
um, we're coming up on time, so I don't want to keep you in case you
Yeah.
got stuff going on. So I want to wrap up with the same five questions I did last time. I don't know if you remember. It's just one thing.
Ooh. Okay.
So Marcy Alice Walker, author of Everybody Come Alive, in stores in May 2024. Um, what's one thing that you like about yourself?
Oh, my blackness.
Hell yeah.
I really, um, my husband will tell you, I really enjoy being black. Like, I enjoy it to the 100th power because I
Yeah.
love to see our resistance, our rise, our joy. I love our joyful resistance. I love that after a dang pandemic, um, and George Floyd, and everyone's waiting to hear from Beyonce. She came out with a freaking disco, house music,
Mm-hmm.
queer album. I love that about us. And I love
Yes.
that I get to be a part of that story.
Hell yeah. What's one thing you're super duper proud of, or just regular proud of?
Oh, my kid. And
Mm.
it's a super duper duper super duper duper to watch them
Unbelievably.
to have a queer kid walk in this world and stand, love who they love, um, stand on their identity. Right, recently they dropped a class because the professor said that they weren't sure if they would remember to use their pronouns, and Max was
Then
like,
like bye.
and Max reported them and was like, deuces. And I was never so proud of that
Mm-hmm.
kid. Yeah.
Yeah. What's one thing that pisses you off, or is like a pet peeve? It can be petty, or it can be like real deep. It's whatever you want.
Dang.
It's like like another big
Um,
one, like another big one.
there's so many, Kevin.
I know.
I am annoyed these days.
Who among us?
um, I I'm really angry at the church. I still
Mm-hmm.
am. I am angry. And I'm angry that they have made so many people frightened that they no longer listen to themselves. I'm angry that they've taken away people's own intuition using scriptures that are bogus so that
Mm-hmm.
people won't listen to their hearts. I'm angry about that on the daily, on the hourly.
You and me both.
Yeah.
Mm. We get that's a whole other podcast. I will not. What's one thing that you are committed to?
um, I'm committed to telling stories and listening to stories and amplifying stories. I am committed to that.
Mm.
10,000%. I spend a lot of my time just endorsing books because it means that much to me when someone says, "Hey, will you endorse this or will you read this?" Or I mean, I'm rooting for all the unheard voices. I'm rooting for
Mm-hmm.
every single one of them,
Yeah.
and I will always be committed to that. It's the one thing that I know that I will always be able to do is to root for somebody. I can't necessarily guarantee that I'll always be able to work out or do this or to do that or even to write, but I will always be able to listen to someone's story and say, preach, tell the truth.
Mm. Mm. What is one thing that you would like to do before you die?
Whew, that's a good one. Oh, there's so many things that I'd like to do before I die, but
What's like the next one you're gonna get done then?
um, I, golly, I really want to buy my sisters. I don't own my home, but my sisters are all 10 years older than me. So uh, I have a sister who's 63 and on down. So 63, 62. And then my other sister may have just turned 60. I'm not sure. But they've worked their whole lives in service jobs, serving people, hard workers, hard to make a buck, hard to keep a buck kind of
Hmm.
people. And I would love to buy them a home so that they don't have to worry about that in their older
Mm,
age. That's like a dream, like the thing I dream about most doing before
yeah.
I die, knowing that I took care of my sisters who
Yeah.
took care of my parents who never get thanks. And,
Hmm.
they're just women just trying to live and exist in this world with
Yeah.
very little privilege.
Well, I pray that this book is so fucking successful that you can buy both your house and theirs.
Aw, from your
Let's
mouth to
bring it.
God's ears.
Listen, we're bringing it. We're calling it the abundance. We're saying angles, make your rounds, and we're going to tell everybody who's listening to this podcast to go pre-order the book if you haven't pre-ordered it yet. What are you doing? Go follow Marcy on all the internets at Black Coffee with White Friends. Subscribe to her newsletter. Is there anything else you want to promote? Anything that you are pushing besides the book right now?
Just a book, and I will be having a live in person event in Chicago, June 1st. So,
Ooh, I'll be there.
at
Listen, I'm
my
coming. Let's go.
favorite feminist queer bookstore. So, I'm very, very excited about that. So,
Yes.
um,
I'm also this is my formal invitation to you as I make my tour rounds for Bad Theology Kills, the
yeah.
belated book tour. Come on and hang out. Let's do a live podcast. That'll be fun.
Oh my gosh, I would love that.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Party.
Yeah. Where are you again?
Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh yeah, I haven't been to Atlanta, and those are my housewives, so I need to go there. So then
Listen,
I
come
can go
through.
to Candy's OLG restaurant and get me some of that cooking and all of
Listen, come
it.
through. I'm gonna hit the stop button now.